Hello guys, today we will be talking about what if Naruto was betrayed by his family part 2. If you enjoyed this video please like and subscribe. Now let's begin. This source is called darkness. Darkness within darkness. The gateway to all understanding. Sliding the kunai from her flesh he spun for a quick slice across the throat. Thud. Looking at the appendage that materialized before his weapon, it was a pale arm that had stopped his kunai. Following the length of the arm he looked into the deep pools of blood staring into his soul. Taking in the presence of Naruto, the Iwa ninja saw the outstretched wings looking like something from a nightmare and the chiseled body. Before the captain even knew what had happened he found his head in the iron grip of the blonde demon. Quickly he felt his strength leave him till he lacked the strength to stand and flopped to the ground when released. With the stolen knowledge and memories, Naruto called out, "Kizuki, take Captain Fujiwara, your deceased partner, and return to your camp." Startled by this man who had appeared and simply disabled his superior so easily, Kizuki followed the orders and ran with the squad under his arms. Once Kizuki was out of sight, Naruto turned his sides to the woman behind him, bleeding from the large stab wound to her stomach and blood seeping from her mouth as she gasped for air. Samui laid on the ground staring into the bright sun, feeling her life slipping away each second. Her view of the sun was blocked by a large winged silhouette who spoke to her. "Do you wish to live a life of servitude or die and fade into the darkened pages of history? Without my friends I have nothing in life, but I fear what I will find in death," Samui thought to herself. Lifting her bloodied hand she reached out to him in a silent plea for help. He watched the woman lay on the ground and reach for him. Taking that as his answer he called upon the distant yokai of his eternal demoness, and familiar purple hue sprang to life around his hands and danced across his skin. Placing his large clawed hand across the bleeding wound, his purple yokai began to spread over her skin like a creeping moss. The escaped blood sizzled off her skin and closed till she was in pristine condition once again. The wound closed and her body returning to normal, he began to skim her knowledge such as important Kumo events, Jinchuriki identities, and even her own bra size was some of the things she deemed important. Last but not least he witnessed her hidden emotions for her deceased friends holding each other in death. Shaking his head of the sadness Naruto felt for them, he used his power to shift her deceased friends to the base of the nearby cliff and sunk their bodies into the rock and used one of her memories to carve out an image. Standing immortalized in stone, Team Samui stood together, one swinging kunai. The rock nin trio apparently had taken lessons from Konoha because their teamwork was near flawless, swiping and ducking, letting the next person swipe while cycling through patterns of attack. Omoi and Karui were doing alright when it began. They had a reach advantage, keeping their opponents at bay. Slowly but surely the 2 versus 3 duel war on the sword-wielding duo. Numerous shallow slices and stabs littered Omoi, and he had taken what hits he could for Karui to keep her alive. "Doton, Doruki," one of the ninjas shouted. The wall erupted from the earth, but instead of it forming between them it burst from beneath the Kumo duo, launching them into the air for a harsh landing. Omoi breathed heavily as he watched the blue skies. "If I die here the Raikage would be so angry he would take it out on the nearest buildings, and with Kumo rebuilding from his rampage Iwa would attack and cause the next shinobi war. But then again, if I die here, I wouldn't have to worry anymore." Obviously Omoi had become delusional with the lack of blood and his injuries. Karui on the other hand was no longer coherent to anything around her. "Kill them and let's catch that last one before she can alert more." The leader popped a soldier pill while his subordinate raised a kunai to end the short lives of the injured couple. The ninja weapon of choice was stopped in a shower of blood as the busty blonde Samui severed the Iwa ninja's hand and came around with a diagonal slice with her sword, killing him by decapitation. Taking labored shallow breaths, Samui caught sight of his savior. "Samui, what are you doing? Get out of here, you should have gotten help." Samui stood, her unflinching glare focused on the enemy. "I would rather die with my friends than live without them." With that she charged. Her tanto gleamed in the sunlight as she flashed her quick sword strikes. Her arcing swings kept the Iwa ninja at bay. Clang. These Iwa ninja were trained well to counter swords, as the captain had stopped the blade during her weakest strike right at the beginning of an upswing. With Samui's blade stalled, the second man flipped over his captain for a heel drop. Abandoning her locked weapon for an escape was the only viable option to avoid the skull-crushing blow. Disarmed and outnumbered, she brandished dual kunai to combat the precise duo. Come now Kumo ninja, can we not be civil and work this out? You three don't have to die here today. Simply let us do our mission and you can leave. Apparently these ninja were not friends, as she had just beheaded one and they barely flinched. While still holding the kunai across her body ready to strike, she responded, and what is your mission that you have to be in Kumo territory? Straightening his posture, we are here to ransack the border farming towns to expand Iwa territory to feed our growing country. Narrowing her eyes further, Samui spat out, you will never take our land. By the creasing around his cloth mask it was plain he was frowning. That is unfortunate. I do not revel in killing, but my country needs the agriculture. Before Samui knew what had happened, the man she was speaking to turned to earth and crumbled to the ground, and the real one rose from beneath her and plunged his kunai into her soft stomach. She was beyond stunned to do anything past simply trying to fill her weakening lungs with air. As Samui stood there bleeding, the Iwanin closed his eyes and murmured the prayer under his breath. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The unnameable is the eternally real. Naming is the origin of all particular things. Free from desire, you realize the mystery. Caught in desire, you see only the manifestations. Yet mystery and manifestations arise from the same source. Come on Karui, Omoi, stop being so loud, it's not cool. The ever stoic and uncaring Samui spoke as she and her team scouted the borders of Kumo and Iwa looking for ninja activity and eliminate it. Yeah Karui, what happens if we are overheard by the Tsuchikage and he pinpoints our location, then sends ninja to take us out silently to open a hole in our defenses and sends an army in to take Kumo by surprise? The exaggerated story was spun by none other than the pessimistic Omoi. Omoi, shut up, all your overthinking will get us killed. Flat-chest Karui responded loudly. Samui sighed heavily. So not cool guys. Little did these three chonin know they were being watched and followed by the stealthy and vigilant Naruto as he sailed above the clouds their village was named for. Naruto had been watching these three ninja traverse the rocky terrain of Kaminari no Kuni. With little else to do, he would wait till they tired themselves out and he would swoop down and nab one and steal whatever secrets they know of the Jinchuriki and other ninja. Time was his as ally. He had been kicked out of the mountainside cave he had created shortly after dawn and told don't come back until sunset. Kiomi had been strict with that order. He saw his prey make a 90-degree turn and dart towards the borders. Naruto flared his gills quickly and ascertained a picture of everything within a 4-mile radius. It seems there are 3 Iwa ninja hugging the cliffside on the Kumo side of the border. This should be entertaining. Naruto saw the 3 chonin stop the Iwanin and begin to converse. Nothing said mattered to the blonde demon. He would get what he wanted and nothing less. Before long the Iwa ninja drew kunai and started belting the area, only for the Kumo trio to swat them out of the air with quick sword swipes. This is your last warning, Iwanin, leave peacefully, Samui said, and Karui cut in or you will leave in pieces. The redhead leveled her sword to the enemy. Iwa never retreats. Give them the mast. Iwagakure shinobi started their hand signs. 3 individual cries of Doton, Doryuden, Doton, Doryaso and Doton, Doryutaiga. The dusty dry ground quickly changed into slippery mud while a large brown dragon emerged from the soggy ground. While Team Samui was busy trying to avoid the dragon and keep balance on the mud, they forgot about the third jutsu. As Karui landed on the mud and brandished her sword ready to charge into battle, a sharp spire of rock shot from beneath her, narrowly dodging it, and while it missed the original target of skewering her, it still tore open a good-sized chunk from her kidney. Karui screamed out while the blood poured from her arteries and veins. Quickly forming up, Samui and Omoi took hold of her arms and hid as Karui tried to stem the blood flow. Gah, it's not stopping. I don't think I will make it, guys, the redhead spoke through clenched teeth while her clothes and hands were drenched in blood. Don't say that. We will get you out alive. If you die, who will keep me in line? I could be stuck rambling and the enemy would get the drop on me. You need to be there to stop me. Karui Omoi was nearing tears as he heard his closest friend and secret crush bleeding behind him. Hey Omoi, it sounds like you need me as a wife to keep you focused. Karui could feel her head getting light. Omoi wiped his eyes with his wrist. Only if you make it out of this alive, Karui. You need to hang on now. Of all the things Karui expected her friends to say, she never expected him to ask for an engagement. Oh Moe, you're always exaggerating. You two need to escape. I can hold them off long enough for you guys to escape. Samui was silent throughout the touching moment, feeling no need to intrude on their exchange until now. I'm sorry oh Moe, she is right. By the blood loss so far and speed of taking her with us, the Iwanin would easily catch up. We must escape and warn the nearest outpost. With few options left, Omoe conceded. Fine, but I am staying with Karui to make sure you get a good head start. Samui was always the cold, calculating woman who never let anything shake her while keeping a balanced head to make tough decisions as the leader of her team and only friends. But at the prospect of losing those she considered siblings, even her eyes were moistening. Fine Omoe, Karui, do all you can to live through this. Taking Karui cheeks, I brother. Omoe kissing his head as well. Her palms. I always thought of you as a little sister, and with that she kissed the crown of her head. And you might be safe. Samui, Kumo needs you. With those words Samui jumped from their hiding spot and broke into a dead sprint for the nearest outpost just a couple miles away. When the Iwanin caught sight of the blonde woman escaping, they began pursuit only to be stopped by the bleeding Karui leaning against Omoe. Where do you think you bastards are going? We aren't done with you yet, the bloodied woman yelled. You Kumo nin don't know when you're beat. If you just play dead we will let you live, the half-mast Taiwa squad leader spoke. That was a pathetic lie. Whatever you have planned, you wouldn't leave us alive, Omoe said plainly while he unsheathed his sword. The leader of the Tsuchi nin laughed. You caught me, so much for the easy way, boys. The three Iwa ninja quickly vanished from their spots to appear in front of the duo, preventing them from keeping anonymity. It's alright. Now hold on, I going to gain some speed. He went from being the size of an elephant to that of a large whale. Letting his yukai flare, they increased from a lazy gliding speed to being a blur in the sky. Kiomi squealed with excitement and let her own yukai flow with his, further increasing the pace. Mei's eyes got very big before she held onto the fur for dear life and hid her face. From the ground Naruto looked like a purple meteor streaking across the sky. With the contact squad, Kakashi-sensei, where are we even supposed to begin looking for Naruto? Sakura Haruno asked. Said Masked Man lazily replied as they soared through the trees. Rei said she saw Kiri being destroyed and the Sanbi being extracted. We don't know what he has accomplished by killing everyone in the village and releasing the Baiju. It is possible he wants to destroy every Baiju as to prevent more Jinchuriki being made like he once was. And it would fit with his personality gaining a tick mark. Sakura remarked. You still didn't tell us where we are going, Sensei. Mama, that is true, Sakura. Well, we are going to the nearest place with the most Jinchuriki. And where is that, Sensei? The pink-haired girl said, getting more frustrated with Kakashi dodging her question. Before Kakashi could answer, Sasuke cut in. The nearest are Iwa and Kumo with two each. Now shut up, Sakura, your voice is grinding on my eardrums. Being cowed by her crush, the pink-cat was quiet. She could see Sasuke glancing at the final member of their squad, Rainamukes herself and fiancé to Sasuke. Sakura was beyond jealous of the younger girl, and ever since they had set off from Konoha she would never let them get a chance alone, for which Rei was silently grateful for. Her father refused to believe Sasuke would force himself on her, even though he had found her only wearing bra and panties. Minato blamed her rampage on the necklace influencing her. Sasuke even lied and said they were having tea when she suddenly attacked and he tore her clothes from her while he was trying to restrain her. All in all, Rei felt very vulnerable and afraid around Sasuke and men in general to a lesser extent. She never let Sasuke get around her back. She was always watching like a scared cat. The silence was ended by Kakashi. We will stop by Kumo and ask them to keep a lookout for Naruto. Hopefully our assumptions are correct and we can complete our assignment. No words were spoken for the duration of the day. They traveled with only the sound of rustling leaves and footfalls to drive them forward. As the sun set and light faded to darkness, they would set up camp. Kakashi held up his hand as the sign to stop. We will camp for the night and continue tomorrow. Get some rest, we will be leaving early. The squad set up their tents and turned in for the night. Only Sasuke had other plans. Opening the flap, he moved over to his fiancée's tent and unzipped the entrance. Looking in, he saw she was curled up with her blankets tucked under her, preventing heat to escape. Seeing her asleep, he inched his way closer to her slumber body and reached his hand towards the edge of blankets to remove them. Suddenly before Sasuke could react, a translucent blue tendril of Yukai shot from her necklace, stopping him from touching her. Yanking his hand from the grasp of the twisting chakra, his hand looked charred and burned as if held within a fire. Not risking further injuring himself, he left Ray to sleep. After Sasuke left Ray's tent, said girl opened her eyes and was trying to slow her fast breathing. She had known Sasuke would attempt to get near her again and was grateful to have the possessive necklace. "Thank you, Naruto," she whispered while grasping the jewel, and as if the Yukai could hear her words, it hummed within her hands, filling her body with warmth. Now we find Ray once again scanning all the record books of Konoha history. She had spent nearly every free moment since her contact with Naruto reading every significant date and event. She had even moved on to reading the KIA killed in action, and MIA missing in action, logs for the past 100 years. So far she had found nothing in her search, and she was beginning to doubt the words left behind by her brother. Shodame had taken a platoon of Anbu out of the village on the 23rd day of summer to battle the incoming Kyuubi. They returned 4 days later, 22 ninja KIA, 4 injured, 4 unharmed. A year later he leaves with another platoon, and returns with only 4 of varying degree of injuries. But why would he only take 30 men with him when he should drive it off with larger numbers? Was the Kyuubi a seasonal destroyer who comes once a year to kill and ravage then leaves again? But what reason does it have to do that? Now father said they had tried to seal Kyuubi before, and you see leech by Ju in a child to have the kid grow with a Yukai and utilize it, and with the breadcrumbs left behind by her brother all she knew so far coincided to solve this problem. Children take 9 months from conception to birth. The Kyuubi only attacked when the Hokages had children to seal it into. Her brother's words rang in her head, then all the records are lies, like a frying pan to the face it hit her. The Kyuubi was never the attacker, it was the victim in this. All the previous Hokages leaving to repel the Baiju only left when their children were just born, and for 30 years after the attacks stopped, but that was only when the Sandame stopped having children and never took his last 2 sons. Kyuubi only ever was seen near Konoha the day it was sealed within her brother. Ray would need to do more investigating, but so far it wasn't looking good for her father. 2 days later, with Naruto, the trio had waited around the cave for the past week, letting Mei recuperate after her 2 months in seclusion. After many large meals and the nights wreathed in the healing purple blanket of chakra created by the demon duo, the Yotan user was back to perfect fighting form again. "Kiomi-chan, Mei, let's move out." Standing on the edge of the sheer cliff, Naruto spread his mighty wings, feeling the wind push against his appendages. Both women came to stand next to him. "You're not going to carry us the whole way, are you, Naruto?" Mei asked, not because she didn't want to be held by the Adonis of a man, but she was sure a bruise would form from the trip. "No, not this time. I want to freely fly in my Baiju form. We will reach the borders of Iwa and Kumo by nightfall. At my flight speed we will make camp on a mountain again. If you would stand back, ladies." When both women had taken a couple long strides away did the transformation begin. His eyes changed to red, the black soft fur covered his skin while the wings melded with his strong arms, providing greater lift with each mighty flap. Where a man once stood, now an elephant-sized flying fox bat had taken his place. "Well, climb on, I am eager to feel the wind." Neither woman needed more prompting, they eagerly jumped onto the soft fur. Kiomi quickly sprawled out, trying to wrap herself in the hair of her lover, letting her red Yukai caress the deep blue of Naruto's. Mei, on the other hand, tried to keep the feeling of the fur gently rubbing against her legs out of her mind. She saw that her demoness friend making fur angels. Laughing softly to herself, Mei continued to watch Kiomi roll back and forth, just loving the fur. "Kiomi, you should settle down. I think Naruto wants to take off." Briefly stopping mid-roll, Kiomi gave Mei the what the fuck look before grabbing the Yotan user and pushing her face first into the soft fur. "Now you feel why I am rolling around. Plus Naruto doesn't mind. If we are affecting his flight, he can just grow larger to compensate." "Right, Naruto," Kiomi said. "Absolutely, Ayami-chan." Obviously Naruto never thought of a pet name for his mate. Pushing off the cliff, he spread his wings and flew into the perpetually cloudy skies of water country. High above the ground he drifted towards the ocean, letting the rising warm air push him to his destination. Suddenly his balanced flight gained some turbulence. "Kiomi-chan, can you stop moving so much?" Haha, sorry Naruto-kun, that isn't me. Glancing over his back, Naruto could see Mei doing exactly what she said would disrupt the flight, rolling around and making fur angels. A blush was present on the parts of her face not hidden by fur at being caught. Sorry Naruto-kun. Mei sat up, smoothing out wrinkles in her clothes from her romp in the fur. It had been a tense week after Rei had told her parents about the Yukai channeling necklace and Naruto being alive. Immediately after her explanation of the events in her dreams and showing them the tenacious necklace latching onto her body, did they finally accept that maybe everything Rei had said was true. Minato examined the jewel before trying to lift it from her body, and exactly as it had happened many times before, thin blue threads latched onto her body and held firmly against all methods of removal. Decisions on the new information were decided by the council. Flashback: once again gathering his advisory council, they discussed how to proceed with the information that Naruto had somehow lived through his execution and became what they had once tried to destroy. This group of advisors were small, only 6 people were included in the circle. The members were Shibuya, Tsuzumi Nuzuka, Shikaku Nara, Hayashi Hyuga, Inoichi Yamanaka, Jiraiya of the Sannin. Naturally, the Toad Sage was rarely in attendance, but he was still included due to his insight into the other nations. How are we even sure this person is your former son? He was gutted and buried. We should dig up the grave to make sure his remains are still there. Without proof, this man could simply be an impostor, a skeptical Inoichi started. It is possible he has transcended a human body. Baiju are self-replenishing and regenerating. It is possible that the deal I had with the gods backfired, and instead of taking Kyuubi with him to death, he became the new Baiju and formed a new shell to house his spirit. Minato was never particular on the fine print. We should try and converse with Naruto. Maybe he has forgiven us. If he does have Yukai as your daughter has said, then he would no doubt be an advantageous ally. This was the voice of undeniable logic. Shibuya, naive but logical. Do you really think that would be even remotely possible? We killed him, no one would forgive that. We should just hunt him down and make sure he doesn't join up with some other village. Tsuzumi Nuzuka gave her own idea. Finally Minato had taken both and came to a solid plan. We can do both. I will send a squad to speak with Naruto and hopefully convince him to return to Konoha under his own power, or the squad will fight to kill him, with both sides satisfied with the plan to acquire a new powerful ally or put down a potential enemy. Next on the agenda is the necklace my daughter wears. It seems Naruto somehow changed the Shodame's necklace to channel his Yukai instead of the demon restraining chakra that once resided within. From what Rei has told me, it works similar to being a Jinchuriki without a Baiju. She can use all the Yukai, with the only limit being how much is stored in the jewel at face value. This necklace was something that could give any ninja the step up in power to defeat Kage's limited strength, but for the time you do have, makes killing or incapacitating anyone simple. So only Naruto's Yukai works within this necklace? Shibi asked. Yes, I have tried everything to influence the current stored energy with various seals to draw out the chakra. It remains steadfast to only react to Rei. Minato responded. Then this is another undeniable reason for the intact return. Naruto, if we could find more of those gems, he could power them, and trusted higher-ranking ninja could become limitless in potential. Shibi had a very good reason for the return of the long-thought-dead Namikaze. That would be far too costly to the village. The jewel alone costs at least triple what our yearly expenses for the entire village is. The fire demo would never supply us with such funding. Hayashi Hyuga added his 2 cents into the conversation. The Inuzuka spoke up. Then we should remove it from Rei and possibly let another person use it to its full capabilities. Tsuzumi, did you not listen to Minato? He said it only reacts to Rei. He would have obviously tested your idea before emitting it. The tired drawling voice of Shikaku. Not only that, it cannot be removed from her, every attempt is thwarted by the necklace itself. Any movement to remove the pendant and threads of pure Yukai sew themselves seamlessly into her skin and only vanish when it is released. It is possibly sentient from the information Rei has supplied to me. She said she can feel basic emotions from the necklace, such as amusement at the plans to remove it. The Yondaime added. We will meet again when the squad returns, either with or without Naruto. The meeting adjourned. Everyone left their seats in the office and left Minato to sit at his desk. Rei will have to be watched with her contact with Naruto. If her display against the Uchiha was any indication, perhaps simply killing him would be worth the loss. I will decide if things go south, the Yondaime thought to himself. Calling for his assistant Misako, please inform Kakashi Hitake, Sasuke Uchiha, Sakura Haruno and Rei Namikaze they have an important mission that needs their expertise. Flashback, and sluggishly the woman opened their eyes and both felt amazing after that night's sleep. Mei rubbed her emerald eyes clear of residue from sleep. What's up, Naruto? I have found the parasite taking my Yukai, he said, trying to contain the laughter. Kiomi was at full attention. She wanted to know who could do such a thing. Well, out with it. Who is it? Ah, it's not a who, but a what. It seems the necklace I had worn as a teen now calls to me, bestowing its wearer with my own purified Yukai. Who is wearing the necklace then? Letting a chuckle pass his lips. Why, it is my own baby sister, Rei Namikaze, soon to be Uchiha. I had such an interesting conversation with her last night when I connected with the gem. So the trio sat down while Naruto explained his nighttime adventure from the journey as being his own Yukai to the final words he left. Throughout his story, Kiomi only ever asked one question, and it was, what are you planning for, Rei? Naruto stopped his story to think about his answer. Why did he talk with her when he could have just took all his Yukai back and then deal with his family when he went to destroy Konoha? Maybe it was curiosity about her and what he could have had as a child, or possibly he felt some sort of familial connection to his unknown sister. Whatever it was, Naruto felt nothing to learn of his twin like he sought to learn about Rei. He too was sort of baffled by his own proclamation that she could be saved. His answer to the question was, I don't know, I always wanted a little sister, but she will ultimately decide. His story, he stood and told them what else he had learned from what Konoha with our current power would be simple, but I want to rake them over the embers of their village before I finish my goals in this world. Saw through Rei's past. Apparently Yagura has been testing the borders of Kumo. We could try to find another of the Jinchuriki. I know, destroying any. Naruto turned to the Yotan user Mei. What are you going to do now that Kirigakure is destroyed? Now the thought had crossed her mind, what would she do now that she had no home and the rebels would probably hope to rebuild or take off for greener pastures? I could ask to be dropped off at a nearby town, be a civilian. Maybe I could teach the local children to survive and live a peaceful life. Or I could stay with Naruto and Kiomi facing Jinchuriki, killing ninja and Baiju. It would be exciting. Now very few ninja ever retired, not because they died so young, but once you have experienced the many wonders of the world and faced high adrenaline situations, it was addicting. You can't stop wanting the rush of surviving dangerous missions. Being a ninja was a drug that you were hooked on until death. I want to go along with you, Naruto. Getting to know Kiomi has been the greatest time I have had in a long time, and maybe in the future I would like to get to know you as well. Mei covered any deeper emotions other than happiness from showing on her face, but her thoughts were quite another story. Kiomi could feel her attraction towards Naruto. Like a moth to flame, she would get closer and closer, knowing death was the outcome, to be one with fire if only for a moment before perishing. That the was path this demon pair walked. No human could possibly survive what they intended to do while in this world, but Mei had shown no fear of following after knowledge of what they planned. What kind of ninja feared death? It was only through surviving it would they grow stronger. Rei just stared, mouth open wide. The Kyuubi had changed shape. It was tall and was beyond peak physical conditioning and was something close to being a god. What's wrong, dear sister? You didn't think I would find out who has been stealing the little bit of Yukai you have taken? Kyuubi? Naruto just had to hold himself from laughing at her. Ha ha, I am no Kyuubi yet, so little sister, why are you taking my power? I don't know what you are talking about, Kyuubi. She responded. The blonde demon held his chin and thought, I don't believe you, cause I felt it being used and I felt you once again calling small amounts to you. So don't try and fool yourself or me. Before Rei could shout any more, Naruto covered her mouth and heard something calling to him in a whisper. Master, glancing around the dream world, his eyes settled on the small blue pendant. So this is the conduit you have been using. Wrapping his large hand around it, he could feel the crystal itself was pulling his Yukai. Intrigued, he let more and more of his chakra flow into the jewel. He could feel it resonate with joy and contentment as he filled it. Finally, no more of his energy could fit within the small necklace. It felt alive within his hand. Opening his hand, the crystal rested in his palm. Watching, he could see his yukai trying to move, with small yukai tendrils wrapping around his fingers and hand pulling itself back to rest between his sister's forming B-cup breasts. Lowering his hand from her mouth so she could speak, the first thing she did was try to pull the necklace off, only for the tendrils to appear and sink into her skin to anchor it securely to her body. Screaming in fright as this thing held tightly to her skin, she pulled with all she could muster, and not an inch was gained. While his sister fought with the amusing item that seemed to like her, Naruto found it beneficial to update himself on how his home was doing. Leaving the girl to fight the necklace, he broke through the thinly woven dream and plunged right into the memories. He watched everything from his death to her rampage against the Uchiha, stifling a laugh at his defeat. What seemed to be hours, Naruto returned to find his exhausted sister laying in her dream, still weakly pulling at the pendant ring. Nabake's soon-to-be Uchiha, how does it feel that you're slated to be the mother of more traitors and, from what I have seen, rapists? Rei turned her face away from him. What does it matter to you, Kyuubi? It is for the greater good of the village. Ah, yes, the greater good of the village. So many atrocities and deaths have been for the good of the village, he said snidely at the ending. My own execution was for the village. Tell me what your father told you that called for my death? Now that was an already answered question. Naruto had committed all her memories to his own. He said you rampaged and attacked Konoha ninja for many years. All the previous Hokage tried to stop you by sealing them within their children, and every time you would escape and kill your host. First, I am not Kyuubi yet, so stop calling me so. Second, everything you have been told by our dear father was a lie. All the records of Kyuubi Konoha coincides with everything I have been told. Also, you have thought that what he said were false. If you checked all the records, Rei was backed into a corner. She had to admit that, so I didn't believe everything he said until I had checked it for myself. What's it you? Naruto could tell he was chipping away at her resolve. What it means is you are still redeemable, oh sister of mine. I will leave you with a question. Why did Kyuubi never attack Konoha directly if it sought blood until the day of my sealing? Until then, little sister, you may continue drawing yukai from me, if only to survive the village. With those parting words, Naruto vanished from her dream. Rei awoke to the morning sun. Her dream was not real. She looked down at the deep blue pendant and lifted the chain from her neck. She almost had it removed from her until the tendrils she had come to hate emerged and pulled itself back into place. She could practically hear the gem laughing at her as the yukai within shook with mirth. Quickly getting dressed, she would tell her father of the necklace and the events of her dream. Hopefully she wouldn't be written off as crazy. Back with Naruto feeling refreshed and better than ever, Naruto let his chakra dissipate from the purple cocoon and Kiyomi's own yukai receded. Naruto gently unfolded his wings, grateful the female duo had released them during the night. They disappeared into a haze of darkness and vanished into his back. Nudging his sleeping partners, Kiyomi, may wake up, I have quite a bit to tell you. Same time as the Rei incident, Naruto sat atop the mountain he claimed as his home, Kiomi and Mei both next to him with his large wings shielding them from the cool wind and warming them. As the trio sat enjoying the night's air, Naruto jerked his head in the southwest direction. He could feel his own energy yukai but so far away. Kiomi too felt his yukai surfacing many miles away, and she remembered seeing it once drifting softly off his body into the wind a couple of days ago. Naruto, did you feel that? Kiomi whispered. Yes, it felt like my own yukai, but it is far away, I cannot pinpoint its location. He responded. Mei had an inkling to what the duo were talking about. How would someone have your yukai? Kiomi shared what she saw a few days prior. A couple of days ago, Naruto, I saw your body giving off yukai while you slept. I immediately stopped from continuing, but it seems someone is drawing energy from you. The blonde considered the possibility of someone being able to draw his yukai from so far away. They would need a conduit for his caustic power, something to purify it, and the only thing that had been able to purify it so far was the combination of his own yukai with Kiyomi's. I will have to be wary of this and follow my energy to the person using it. The sun had long fallen and the moon had taken over the skies. Kiyomi softly snoozed against his side with his wing folded over her. Surprisingly enough, Mei also had snuggled up to the demon and clutched to his wing tightly. Sighing in mild amusement, he gently picked both up, one in each arm, and brought them into the safety of the cave. Placing Mei onto her stone bed, he released his hold on her and went to move, only to be stopped by the strong hold she had with his wing. Again picking up the woman, he stomped his foot and let his yukai reshape the rock. The rock reformed into a large raised slab large enough to fit the man and 2 women. Laying down with both stunning girls on each side, he let his yukai prod and pull against Kiyomi's own yukai till a large misting blanket of royal purple covered the trio. With the soothing chakra flowing over them, Naruto's eyes were rapidly closing, and before he knew it a peaceful sleep had claimed him. Back in Konoha, after Rei's rampaging attack on Sasuke, she was released from the wooden confinements and returned to the Namake's mansion, where Kushina put her to bed. Minato Namake's was in his large office surrounded by his best advisory council as they continued to throw out possibilities on how Rei had released the demonic chakra, and so far nothing made sense. The first theory was that she had been possessed by a demon, but it was shot down since the Shodame's necklace she wore would have repelled and restrained any demons releasing the yukai. The second theory was she had developed demon yukai instead of regular chakra. That too was shot down after she was tested and only human chakra was found. The final theory was she was a hidden Jinchuriki. Minato himself laughed at the idea of his own daughter containing a beast. To save the curiosity, he himself checked his daughter for any unknown seals and none were found. Unknown to everyone, the Shodame's jewel was never intended to control any Baiju over 4 tails. It was his final gift to Konoha to fight against the Jinchuriki. At the day of Naruto's execution, his body was releasing constant streams of Kyuubi's yukai and some of his own. While the necklace continued to restrain and purify the demonic chakra, it failed in the last seconds of Naruto's life. The jewel lost the self-replenishing chakra of the Shodame and became filled with the mix of Kyuubi's and Naruto's own. Now, instead of protecting against demons, it amplified yukai while purifying it with the human, demonic combination. With the chakra itself to draw upon was Naruto's. It is connected to him, to the wearer. Similar to Jinchuriki, whenever in heightened states of stress, be it anger, fear or even sadness, the wearer can use the yukai stored within the crystal. While Rei slept peacefully in her bed, the jewel called to its parent yukai to replenish the amount its wearer had used. Slowly but surely the deep blue yukai seeped through the window and walls like a ghost and drained into the small green jewel. As the pendant absorbed more of the chakra, it changed from the sea green color to a cyan hue, and the more stored, the deeper blue it became. Back with Naruto, he awoke to the subtle feeling of his yukai separating from the purple mix and drifting away. He watched as his yukai heeded the call of another. With his chakra part of him, he let himself flow with it. The out-of-body experience was peculiar. He had none of his sense to tell him what was happening. He was only being drawn towards an unknown destination. No sense of time or space as he drifted with his chakra until the pulling stopped and he could feel once again, although he only felt the pulsing chakra of the person he assumed was calling his own power. Letting himself flow into the constant moving stream, he was surprised to feel no resistance from the person, as human chakra didn't like to be mixed with anything but human chakra. Then it was like sorting through the memories of a person he absorbed, only now he had no control over it. He witnessed the dreams of this person and he recognized the scenario. It was his execution, only it was different than he remembered. Never had he escaped his captors, but it seemed this person dreamed he did. Naruto was enthralled to watch the imagination of this person using him to kill everyone, until the dream version of himself stopped and stood looking at him. Assuming that he was witnessing the dream form first person, Naruto extended his power to manipulate this dream world, taking control of his dream self. Naruto saw who was calling his yukai was none other than his own sister. Naruto's dream self morphed into his true form. Of all the people who I thought who would be stealing my power from me, you had never crossed my mind. Sasuke gently cupped her face, kissing you, and he attached his mouth to hers and began to try and probe her mouth with his tongue. Feeling the slimy appendage touch her lips, she pushed him away. Stop it, Sasuke, and Rei wiped her mouth. Now never in Sasuke's life had he even been denied something so this was an anger-inducing first. No, you stop it. We are to be wed, so you will listen to me and obey, he said forcefully. This time he grabbed a hold of her kimono and pulled her towards him. Leave me alone. She punched him and stood up to go. I am leaving. No, you are not. And with speed gained through training and age, Sasuke was up and had backhanded her across the room. You are my fiancé, so you will obey me or be punished. And again he had moved to her and already had his hands undoing the bow holding her kimono up. The bruise was forming on her delicate cheek as she tried to wrestle Sasuke away from her, but his strength was above hers and he only worked faster to divest her of clothing. With the kimono opened he saw her undergarments match her dress, white with black trim. I'm going to enjoy having you as my wife, and Sasuke began to knead her breasts through the bra. Rei was in shock. This man was molesting her and she could do nothing to stop it, and she felt the cool air reach her nipples as Sasuke pushed her bra up. She felt his slimy tongue touch her breast and she began to struggle more, but her held still. Then a hand touched her other breast and then she felt the final hand ghosting down her stomach. Tears breached her eyes and flowed down her cheeks, cooling the burning bruise that was present. Then she felt his fingers touch her through the dignity she had left. Fear spiked within her and strength filled her body. Shoving Sasuke off her, he flew across the room and into a wall, leaving spiderweb cracks where he hit. All thought had stopped in her mind only to kill this man who dared defile her and was present. Her eyes turned from the light purple coloring to blazing red. Her shoulder-length hair grew till it reached her waist. Her muscles rippled with renewed strength. Rei's bra had moved back to cover her breasts once she had stood, but modesty meant nothing to the young woman. Charging to the disorientated Sasuke, she grabbed his shirt and hefted him into the air. Her cocked backhand released and gave a stone-shattering blow to his sternum. The Uchiha broke through the wall he had impacted and continued out and over the wall and landed into one of the major streets nearby. Sasuke coughed up some blood and felt his ribs had cracked. Glancing around, he saw a crowd had gathered around him and only dispersed once a thundering crash was heard. Rei had hit the ground with a boom as the dirt gave way to her landing. She stood with deep ocean blue chakra glowing around her like a fire. Each step she made scorched the ground. Reaching the Uchiha, she smashed a fist into the ground he once was as he had used Shunshin. Turning, she saw him nearby nursing his chest. This was the scene Minato came upon, catching his daughter in her bra and panties, smashing anything that was in her way. To Sasuke, Rei Nabikaze, cease and desist. He bellowed. The only response he got was her head tilting to look him dead in the eyes, and he saw the once beautiful eyes she had were now blood red. Rei let out a loud growl and charged the injured Uchiha once more, but she was cut off by a large wooden totem pole sprouting from the ground and wrapped her flailing limbs as she tried to shake it off. Rei's efforts were in vain as the wood drained the Uchiha from her body. The sudden power rush left her exhausted as her eyes closed. The caste-masked Anbu who had created the totem pole spoke. Sir, that was demonic chakra she was giving off. Of keen down us leading up to the Hokage Mostri Sertio. Maybe I am gone crazy. The young contacted the gods themselves to destroy Kyuubi. What do I have to worry? Feeling a little better, Rei's mood brightened and she would apologize to her father for not believing him when she saw him. Up the stairs and into the large room that all the village leaders occupied. Before him Minato sat with a young well-known raven-haired man. This was the scene Rei stumbled on. So Sasuke, what does the last Uchiha have to offer for the hand of my daughter? Well, Hokage, I have an activated Sharingan, which means nearly all my children will also activate it. Also, beyond my Dujutsu, I have much wealth backing me that I would be inclined to invest into the many projects this village has undertaken, such as the humane genetic experiments started by Orochimaru. But it is really up to you where my investments would land, sir. Minato saw many advantages to wedding his youngest to this young man, all very excellent reasons, but I have one more question. Being who you are, there are hundreds if not thousands willing to throw themselves at your feet to be chosen as your wife. Why you want Rei? The Uchiha have been disgraced and there are many who think me untrustworthy, but with the daughter of the Hokage standing by my side, I may raise my honor and reputation. Once again become a highly respected clan of Konoha, born of Uchiha and Namikaze blood. It was at this point the Yondaime saw his youngest standing slack-jawed at the door. A year earlier than I expected, but you know Sasuke Uchiha, he has come to ask me for your hand in marriage. The Uchiha stood. It is a pleasure to meet you, Rei Nabikaze, he said while bowing. Mine as well, Sasuke Uchiha, she said, returning the gesture. I will take my leave, Lord Hokage, and Sasuke left and gently closed the door. Rei stared at her father and he didn't seem to have a problem with Sasuke's proposal. Then Minato spoke. Rei, the final decision is up to you, but with the monetary value held solely by Sasuke would greatly improve many sections of Konoha and help us expand further and provide greater training regimes for future shinobi and kunoichi. Now he had placed such a great decision upon her. sacrifice her life for the betterment of Konoha or say no. Sasuke didn't seem to be such a bad guy. Maybe she could grow to love him and she would be helping Konoha. Dad, think I accept, for the greater of Konoha, right? Minato was happy his daughter had accepted and Konoha would grow excellent. I will write up the date for the wedding and have it sent to Sasuke. Standing up and rounding his desk, he wrapped his daughter in a tight embrace. My little girl is so grown up. Wrestling from the hug, Ray looked at her father. Dad, about this morning, I'm sorry. It's just these nightmares seemed so real. I was scared. It's alright, sweetie, everything is okay. Time skip days later in Konoha. It was a cool evening in the village and tonight was the first meeting between the engaged Sasuke and Rei since the proposal. Sasuke booked the most expensive restaurant with the best table they had. Being a wealthy Uchiha had many perks. Dinner was uneventful. They made simple conversation and chatted about various topics hot amongst the village, such as the terrifying news of Kirigakure being eliminated from the face of the earth being one of them. Rei's dream came true, so she was a little off during the date. Sasuke paid the bill and walking down the empty streets of Konoha he turned to his date. Rei, would you like to come back to my place for some tea? Now Rei Namikaze was only 15, newly engaged to an older 18-year-old man. She had very little experience in relationships, being isolated with her family for so long, so tea meant they were having tea. Sure Sasuke, I would love some tea. Oh, how naive she was. Entering the luxury clan head mansion left behind by the Uchiha, the couple sat down on pillows around a small table. Smoothing out the wrinkles in her ankle-length white kimono with black petals dancing around the fabric, Rei sat in the silence as one of the servants set the mint tea down and poured 2 cups. Sasuke waved the servant off and began to sip his tea. You are very beautiful. Rei sputtering a little into her tea, she gained a red tinge to her cheeks. Thank you Sasuke, you are very handsome yourself. Rei didn't even notice that Sasuke had set his tea down and moved to her side. Seeing her host so close next to her, she sat her tea down and leaned away from the man. Sasuke, what are you doing? She leaned further away. Rei Namikaze wandered from her comfortable room, finding her older brother and parents sitting around the dining room table. She sat herself as far from them, with what she planned to tell them. They would react. Mom, Dad, you know how I haven't been sleeping right these past years, the young girl said. The parental duo gave her a questioning glance. Yes, we had Inoichi himself check you out. He found nothing out of the ordinary, Minato answered. I know what has been disturbing me this whole time. Just never wanted to say anything. The red-haired girl felt ashamed and turned her yes towards her lap. I have been having nightmares of the execution day of Naruto. She caught herself before speaking the forbidden name. Both Minato and Kushina shared a relieved look. Honey, the Kyuubi is gone, forever banished from this world, Kushina said in a loving warm voice. Slamming her hands on the table, shaking the tableware. But he isn't. He keeps reappearing in my dreams, always getting closer to us. Last night he spoke to me. The outburst immediately ended the good mood. Rei, this joke has gone on long enough. Not another word or you will be sent to your room, Minato said sternly. Please, you have to believe me, Dad. He said that he was reborn and coming to destroy Konoha. She pleaded with her father. Enough, young lady, to your room. After breakfast your mother will deal with you. Minato stood from his seat and grabbed his cloak off the back of the chair and threw it on before walking out the door. Rei's eyes were brimming with tears. Pushing away from the table, she ran back to her room and locked the door before throwing herself onto the feather-soft bed and cried. The young red-haired Giri cried herself to sleep within the warm embrace of her bed. Deep ocean blue chakra, not her own, floated around her body before sinking into the tiny green pendant she had made from the Shodame's necklace. With the death of her unknown brother, she took it as a token of remembrance and remade it. The yukai continued to flow into the necklace and her body, unable to deal with the energy, became restless, and the yukai affected her dreams. Nightmare. Rei was standing amongst toppled buildings and corpses. This was not her usual dream. This looked to be a war zone. She saw a man with green chakra flowing around him. Without wanting to, she moved at speed she had never witnessed outside of her father's time-space jutsu and punched the man with more strength than anyone but Tsunade herself could generate. Again she engaged the man and gave him a sound thrashing, before lifting him off the ground and shoving her hand through his stomach. The green chakra gushed from the wound she had inflicted and formed into a giant turtle. She dropped the body and zoomed to another location to avoid the foot that stomped her previous position. Rei nightmare shifted. Now she towered over everything, and she had wings, and they lifted her off the ground. High above the ground she saw a symbol inscribed upon one of the walls she glanced at. The four wavy lines indicated that this decimated land was Kiri. Suddenly she felt power grow in her mouth before she unleashed the dark blue sphere into the heart of the city. The blue dome that expanded from the impact site covered the whole area, and when the light cleared, only smooth earth remained where the large civilization once stood. In nightmare many miles away, the exhausted Naruto was asleep as his mind worked with the inflow of knowledge from Sanbi and regulating the new power. Even after splitting the energy 50-50 with Kiomi, it was almost triple what he had before. Naruto's own deep ocean blue Yukai flitted off his body into the air, where it sailed with the wind to where jumped at her command and mixed with Naruto's own, stopping anymore from escaping. Was called. Kiomi wandered in to see the powerful Yukai being sapped from her love. Quickly her own Yukai back in Konoha with a Yukai flow stopped. Rei's nightmare ended and she awoke from her slumber in a sweat. Why did I dream of Kiri in ruins? Wiping her moist forehead, she straightened the wrinkled clothes from her restless sleep. Rei looked to the clock and it said only 10 minutes had passed. Her nightmare was vivid to be dreamed up, but so improbable to be true. Kushina entered her daughter's room and saw the tear-stained pillow and sighed to herself. Rei, what's going on? What was that outburst at the table? Kushina wrapped her arms around her child and hugged the young girl into her chest. Rei wiped her nose and she looked tearfully into her mother's eyes. But Mom, I think the Kyuubi is back. He keeps appearing in my dreams every night, threatening to decimate Konoha. I'm scared. Rei, it's alright. Your father and I spent many years finding the way to form a soul contract with the gods. We wouldn't have went through with the execution unless we were sure. But what if you were wrong? What if Kyuubi is only recuperating? Honey, have faith in us to know what we were doing. Kushina smiled and kissed her daughter's head. Your father said he had something important to tell you today. You better go see him with that. The red-haired mother left the room. Sueton, Miserapao retaliated. The water rushed over the lava. The water did little to slow the speed, and the now solid chunks impacted his body, bruising him and cracking his sternum. Coughing, his breathing was difficult to control and already he could feel the flesh beginning to swell. He watched Mei dash towards him, turning his body to evade the punch. He felt his sternum move and grind together. Our body seized in pain and received a right hook to the face. Stumbling back, he was struck again, left, left, finally and uppercut landing hard on his back. His face was bruised and blackening. Al watched the woman approach him, then he heard it. The deafening screeching Mei covered her ears. This was his chance. Drawing a kunai from his pouch, he flipped to his feet, ignoring the pain, reaching out with his arm to slay to enemy. Al never expected her hands to shoot out and hit the medial epicondyle too. His arm caved. She wrapped her hand around his and forced the kunai towards his head. The kunai slid easily into the soft tissue of his chin and through the oral cavity and piercing the lower parts of his brain. Al, the ex-rebel commander, knew no more after Mei twisted the kunai and ripped it out. Blood poured from the hole and the body fell to the ground in a growing pool of blood. Kiomi watched the gigantic bat screech. He had done it. Naruto defeated Sanbi and took his power as his own. Running swiftly across the twisted metal and rubble, she jumped onto the midnight fur of Naruto. Climbing up the behemoth, she reached his head and wrapped her hands around his fur and sat comfortably among the softness. Naruto felt his lover adjust within his fur and felt a small smile grow on his vulpine-like face. Scanning the ground, he saw the rich blue kimono of Mei and used one of his winged arms to scoop her up and place her next to Kiomi. Tensing his large wings, he blasted into the air. The gusts of wind he produced kicked up mountains of dust. Once high above the ground, he circled the half-destroyed shinobi village. Opening his mouth, a deep blue sphere grew between his lips before he fired it straight into the heart of the village. Nothing happened for a moment after the energy impacted the earth, but soon enough the entire area was consumed in the explosion that ensued. People were incinerated, buildings evaporated. Only a large desolate circle was left where the bustling village once stood. Kirigakure no Sato was no more. Rinamikaze awoke with a yell. Her nightmare had come back. Kyuubi had slaughtered everyone and stood glaring at her. Then the demon spoke. The time has come, Rinamikaze. I am reborn and Konoha shall be trampled beneath my crusade. Kyuubi wrapped his bloodied hands around her throat and lifted her clean off. He ground. Ninja will fall, people will die, the world will be forever changed. I have arrived. The nightmare terrified her into hyperventilation, the hatred within Kyuubi glowered just beneath the blood-colored eyes. This was the first time Kyuubi had ever spoken. It was time to tell her parents of the disturbing themes her sleep had conjured. Oh, you think May is here for you? No, she cares nothing for Kiri, so she has no quarrel with you but that man. He gestured over to the arrived Ao. No, my special friend, and plunged his clawed fingers through the stomach of Yagura. The Sanbi himself. Naruto reared back as it was immediate as the green chakra misted out of the wound and floated along the ground before building itself back into the giant turtle of legends. Rasanbi roared its freedom complete, turning its open eye onto the bleeding form of Yagura. It quickly stomped a large foot on the man. Yagura, the Yondaime Mizukage of Kirigakure, was dead, by his own Baiju finishing the deed. The Baiju sniffed the air and it began searching the ground for the source of the power it sensed. A young demon has freed me, no time for talk, your power shall be mine. With that the Sanbi drove Naruto, intent on simply eating him and being on its merry way. Head to the location of dodging the gaping maw. Sanbi, you and the other 8 bring such shame to us demons. You are nothing more than animals searching for your next prey. The Sanbi roared and let loose multiple water torrents from its mouth. Naruto dodged all of the well-aimed shots except the final one. Like slow motion he watched it closed in on him. Has all of this time been wasted up to this moment? My revenge never complete, my feelings for Kiomi unexplored. No, I must survive, I will live, I just have to move. And like that Naruto vanished from his spot in a swirl of water, appearing years away. He stood wide-eyed at what he had just done. The Shunshin, it was a jutsu. Demons couldn't do jutsu. Well, maybe if he could do one, maybe he could do another. Rolling through the hand signs for a Suiton he had absorbed from one of the ninja Suiton. Suiryuden no Jutsu, the large watery dragon formed from the water flowing out of destroyed plumbing. It quickly raced around Sanbi, pelting it with dense shots of water. Finally the large dragon just flew headlong into the side of the beast, toppling the great turtle and forcing it to fall onto its belly. Leaping onto the shell of the demon, Naruto began unleashing stone-shattering blows, and the shell dented and cracked beneath the hits. It happened, his fist penetrated the thick shell. He grabbed hold of the edge of the hole and began ripping off more pieces, making a larger and larger gap in the impressive defense. Naruto could see the pink blood-filled flesh below. Before the shell could repair, he dropped inside of the demon. It was pitch black within the shell, and only the blue yukai dripping from the blonde demon's hands lit the surroundings. The inside of Sanbi was like a feral demon's wet dream. Power-filled blood was everywhere. All he had to do was break open the soft protections and drink to his hard content. Naruto did just that. The Sanbi roared in pain. It could feel the pest within itself tearing at its flesh and draining its power. The Sanbi had no defense against an inside attack. No one had ever thought to force their way into its protective shell. Many had went for the thick, tough and exposed skin around its head. The feelings of its power being sapped away deluded its mind. Sanbi had no escape from this kind of attack. He would die no matter what he tried. The only change between outcomes is one had far less pain. Resigned to his fate, Sanbi focused on the ingenious demon ripping him apart and simply let his power go. Inside with Naruto he was getting all he could consume, shoving fistfuls into his mouth, but the blood started flowing faster and filling the place. Soon he was swimming in the red liquid. The blood started spinning round and round a whirlpool with him at the bottom. The flesh of Sanbi turned into the liquid and joined the large torrents. On the outside it looked to be the Sanbi was imploding. Its shell caved in, the head and legs were pulled into the large red tornado. Naruto touched down on the ground when the blood started forcing its way into his mouth and eyes. Unable to move, he felt the power of Sanbi adding to his own. Naruto was now a tailed beast. He would gain an animal form custom to him. Once all of the blood had forced its way inside of the young demon, the changes began. His arms and wings met, fusing, becoming one. Fear sprouted black as night. Naruto's ears pointed and migrated to the top of his head. His face morphed and became fox-like. A smaller set of wings grew from below his current ones, just as powerful. His new pipistrellus one body lacked the webbing between the legs, providing him with greater mobility on ground, but flying would be difficult. His entire eye began to glow red. No longer did he have an iris or pupil, just a deep glowing red. Lastly his body began to grow, first 10 feet, then 30, 50, finally he peaked out at 75 feet. Invigorated with power, Naruto let loose his first cry as a Baiju screech. The pitch of the scream forced all within a mile to cover their ears. Minutes earlier Mei had engaged her former trusted commander. You will be taken prisoner once again. Mei Tirami to face treason and war crimes against Kirigakure no Sato. The Yotan woman's laughter began with a slight hitch in her breath, and it grew into a loud mocking laugh. After she had controlled herself, "No, you won't surprise me like last time. Today you will die." With Kirime shot forward with a haymaker. Skillfully dodging, Al spun for a backhand, but the woman blocked with a raised forearm. Kicks and punches were ineffective. Separating Mei begun her hand signs Yotan, Yugantama. Large red globs of molten rock burst from her mouth and sped towards the man. Suddenly, like the gods themselves parted the curtain, Kirigakure was presented in all its glory. The buildings were pristine, streets polished, the people were bustling around the city without a care in the world. Naruto was disgusted. This was what he remembered Konoha as. Letting his lips curl into a snarl, Naruto touched down just outside the large guarded walls. Setting his passengers down onto their own feet, Naruto let his more demonic features manifest across his body. Red tattoos glowed ominously, his manicured nails thickened and cured, the leathery wings toughened and became heavy, unusable for flight but for great defense. The top knot in his hair vanished and the long blonde hair draped around his head. And finally all of Naruto's muscles coiled with strength as he let some of the more muscular physical traits he had absorbed be shown. With his battle cry, Naruto surged forward, fists first, and began pounding on the wall. Each punch left a large indentation or crack in the solid stone before a few more punches forced a hole which he enlarged to fit his bulky body. The battle within Kirigakure no Sato was underway. Naruto's unprompted entrance set off alarms and alerted every ninja within the city to his location. Even with his limited amount of power, he more than enough to take the city by storm. Ah ha ha ha, come and get me, mortals. Naruto simply furled his wings as the kunai sailing through the air harmlessly bounced off the thickened skin. His laughter echoed off buildings when more and more weapons were hurled at him. Finally he had enough of this farce. He swung his wings and buffeted the flying weapons away. Dashing to the nearest ninja, he grabbed a hold of the man's leg and used him like a mace. Naruto swung the ninja and bashed his limp body into another. The sound breaking bones and screams were abundant. Absorbing the knowledge from his lifeless weapon, the blonde demon cast the corpse aside and began toppling buildings. His wings dug into the brick or concrete walls, leaving large trenches and cutting the supports. Like dominoes, houses and towers would lean and push. Moreover, rubble was scattered around. In the first few minutes of Naruto's rampage, he had already a tenth of the entire city reduced to scrap, and while he provided the demolition, Kiomi was busy swiftly zipping through the throngs of people, feeling out their minds and urging the weak to simply kill themselves or she vanish and appear near them while their throats erupted into a spray of blood and gore. "Come on out, Samui, face your death," Naruto roared over the terrified screams around him. "I do not know of your motives for defiling my village, but you will not live to regret this decision." Yagura jumped from the roof of a standing tower and landed into a low crouch. With the rich green chakra of Samui burst from his skin and cloaked him from harm and strengthened his body. "He the turtle has come out to play. I will enjoy ripping the Baiju from your corpse and using the power to decimate the remains of your pitiful village." And it began. Naruto dashed forward, his wings folded to reduce resistance and provide greater aerodynamics, smashing his hulking body into the green-wreathed form of Yagura. The power behind the body slam sent the surprised Mizukage tumbling ass overhead, blowing through standing walls and rubble. Finally coming to a stop, Yagura took large gasps for air. The strength this abomination possessed was far above anything he had experienced in his entire career of being a ninja. Naruto's body parted the hanging dust with a whoosh and Yagura rolled away, narrowly dodging the crater-forming attack. The Mizukage watched as Naruto launched out of the crater and landed just on the edge of the dent upon the earth. "You are not human or beast. Your intelligence suggests human, but your body is that of an amalgamation of animals." "Ah, you're right, I am not of this world. I am something more. I am a demon." Naruto vanished from his position and appeared with his large fist embedded within the ground where Yagura was standing a moment ago. Yagura appeared next to Naruto with his fist cocked back, letting loose the most powerful punch he could muster with Sanbi's power. Sadly, it merely deflected off the bulky wings that defended against everything else. With the punch moved away, it left a half of Yagura's body open to attack. Boom! The sonic boom was created from Naruto's punch. Once again Yagura rolled and flipped across the ground at the power behind the punch. The Baijiu cloak protected much, but he could still feel the fractured ribs repairing themselves. Standing once more, Yagura flipped through a fast pace of hand signs Suiton, Oshitama. The large stream of water blasted through the air. Naruto watched as the water raced towards him. Taking hold of one of the outside structure bones from his wing, he wrapped it around himself like a shield, with his arm acting as more support against the pressurized water. Finally it hid like a train. The water pushed him along the ground, his clawed feet digging into the dirt for traction. Finding a solid foothold, Naruto grabbed his second wing and held it next to his current protection, and he pulled them both into the stream and angled them to cut the water. It felt like the water had slowed to the pressure of a garden hose, but in reality his angled wings cut the water like a knife, rushing through the stream. He could feel the terror within Yagura as he raced against his most powerful attack. The water pressure was now unsteady, the fear working against the chakra control. Reaching the terrified Mizukage knocked the hand seal aside and the jutsu stopped. Before Yagura could evade, a large clawed hand wrapped around the scrawny neck of the Jinchuriki and lifted him clear off the ground. All out of tricks, Yagura, I have a special friend just waiting to meet you. Mei landed next to the combatants and glared at her enemy. So you brought the escaped woman? She was no match for me months ago. What changes now? Yagura gasped out around the throat, closing grip on his neck. The demon couple awakened from their slumber to the embrace of each other. Naruto unfurled his wings and briefly outstretched them before bursting into dark mist and disappearing into his back. Kiomi gave an exaggerated yawn and wiped her sleepy eyes, briefly craning her head. She stole a quick kiss from her immortal partner. Good morning, Kiomi. Morning, stud, she responded with a wink. Naruto merely gave a satisfied smirk and pulled Kiomi up right alongside him. Feeling the cool morning air, he saw their state of undress. Grabbing his crumpled pants, he felt the dried sweat from their late-night exercise. With the application of Yukai, he cleansed his body. Kiomi pulled her clothes on and tightened the bow around her waist. The same burst of energy, she too cleansed all unwanted filth and grime. Now back in presentable fashion, they gazed searchingly around the cave for Mei. No trace left inside, but the duo picked up her scent outside and saw her still in the torn clothes they found her in. Kiomi walked to the sleeping woman and gently shook her shoulder until she stirred from her sleep. Wakey wakey Mei, we have much to plan. Mei opened her dilated eyes and quickly closed them at the morning sunshine lighting the blue sky. Getting to her feet, Mei stretched widely and immediately her torn dress protested against the wide movement with a loud drip. A large tear started in the center of her breasts and went midway down her torso, leaving little to shield her chest from view. The Yotan woman crossed her arms to protect her modesty after almost giving the demonic god and goddess a free show of the girls. Naruto kept a straight face through it all. The temptation of boobs did little to stir him. It seemed all he needed to quell the burning urges was to simply sate them. Kiomi on the other hand let loose a melodic laugh at the situation her fellow woman found herself in. Come Mei, I will make temporary clothes for you. Kiomi grabbed the wrist of the stunned woman and dragged her into the cave. Now out of sight, Kiomi finished the rip and the dress fell to the ground. Unfazed by the scantily clad form before her, Kiomi circled and sized Mei's body up. After the second time around, Kiomi smiled and held her hands out, palms upwards, and a dress identical to Mei's old one materialized in her hands. How did you do that? It is a simple demonic trick. This will cover you over until you can find new clothes. Kiomi handed over the durable Yukai clothing and left Mei to dress herself. Moments later, Mei exited the cave fitted in her new battle dress with matching skirt beneath. So what do we have to plan? Naruto turned from his watching of the morning sky. We are planning for the death of Sanbi. Why are you after Yagura again? Yagura is just an obstacle before Sanbi. Once the Baijiu is released from his body, I or Kiomi will engage and defeat it. What will you do once you have defeated the Sanbi? We will consume its blood and take the power it holds. Mei's jaw dropped. Sure, she had talked with Kiomi and she said she liked the taste and feeling of drinking the blood of other demons, but she thought it was a joke. But the serious expressions they wore, she could tell that they were anything but joking. Naruto sensed that any form of planning with Mei seemed frivolous because at the moment she was either scared or shocked. Sighing deeply, he sprouted his large black bone wings, scooping both women into his strong arms. He lifted off the cliffside and drifted on the warm air currents. With the memories of the Kiri and Bu he killed, the hidden village was tucked into a sloped mountain shrouded in the abundant hanging mist. They drifted in the atmosphere for half an hour, overseeing the vast lush forests of Mizuno Kuni. The clouds of water were close to the ground now. With the temperatures nearing the ocean, the heavy fog flitted along the ground without lifting. Visibility became null even when beyond human boundaries. Naruto closed his eyes and let the gills paint the world around him. Slowly gliding along the ground, Naruto only flapped his wings to stay airborne and swerving to dodge the stationary trees. Finally, I might get some sleep. Mei watched her juices sink into dirt. Crawling away from the wet puddle of mud she made, she curled up and fell into a restful sleep filled with images of pleasuring her rescuers and them pleasuring her. Oh, make. Who wears the pants? With the love-making done, Naruto set Kiomi on the ground. Walking swiftly over to his pants, he grabbed them from the pile of clothes. Here, Kiomi, try the pants on. The redhead thought it was an odd request, but she humored him and slipped his pants over her long legs. With the pants on, she had to hold them with both hands to keep them from falling to the ground. Naruto smiled and said, how do they fit? They don't fit at all, Naruto. Kiomi huffed. Exactly, and don't you forget it. Naruto felt he got his point across. Kiomi got a dark look over her face. Naruto, try this thong on, she said as she held up the offered blue lingerie. Naruto eyed the thong and laughed. I'll never get into that. And you never will if you keeps that attitude. Kiomi smiled as she saw the pale face of Naruto take on a look of pure horror. You may wear the pants, but she wears the thong. Please, Naruto, be gentle. Those 4 words and all the mental suggestions Kiomi could send drained Naruto's urges under control. His eyes softened, and he could think clearly again. Nodding his head as the sign he understood her question, he pressed into her, slowly, his penis sunken until meeting up against the final barrier. Kiyomi's hymen was the final blockade against their coupling. Naruto tore his gaze from where his cock disappeared into her vagina and looked into her eyes. Kiyomi, if you want to stop. Naruto didn't get out anything else. Kiomi kissed him deeply. Please, Naruto, she whispered out. Placing his hands above her shoulders to get better leverage, he thrust his hips forward and officially broke Kiomi from the last vestige of innocence. Kiomi let out a shrill yell at the pain she knew would come. Leaning down on his elbows, Naruto kissed her softly and channeled Yukai to make their combined soothing energy. The tears had stopped flowing and her regenerative abilities fixed the damage. Kiomi wiggled her hips to alert to Naruto that she was ready to continue. Naruto slowly drew his hips back, lost in a feeling of tightness the wet tunnel of love he was currently occupying gave him, and with their demonic regeneration and immortality she would be like this forever. Naruto gritted his teeth and stopped all his movement. His dirty thoughts betrayed him and only tried to end this feeling prematurely. Kiomi merely closed her eyes and focused on the amazing stretch she felt within her, and with the slow drawback from Naruto she could feel his cock slide against her silky walls. Once Naruto drowned his climax with determination, he dipped his hips forward once more into the welcoming embrace from his lover. Slowly but surely her gained speed and power behind each thrust. Ugh, Naruto, please faster, Kiomi moaned out as he was pushing her so close and yet so far from her nirvana. Anything for you. Charging his muscles with Yukai, he sped up, in and out, in and out. The movement is old as time itself. Harder, Naruto, I'm almost there. Grabbing a firm hold on her ass cheeks, Naruto pulled her up with him. Now he was standing with her legs still firmly locked around his waist. Now both lovers put forth their effort to reach their bliss. Kiomi ground her hips side to side, up and down. Naruto used his grip on her ass to plow further, harder, and faster into her tingling pussy. Oh, Naruto, it feels too good. Please drive your cock deeper into my pussy, Kiomi shouted in between their frantic movements. Here it comes, Kiomi. Both pair of eyes were closed, putting every ounce of strength into this pleasurable feeling. With Kiyomi's pussy clamping down onto Naruto's penis, he finally gave in to the amazing sensations. Slamming his hips harder to assure that she got the best of it, Naruto held himself deep within her. "Fuck, I'm coming." His semen churned in his balls before releasing at amazing speeds, hosing down her silky walls. Kiyomi's eyes shot wide open as his boiling hot seed splattered against her pussy walls and uterus. Finally, this was what she needed to reach her nirvana. Her screams echoed off the stone walls and reverberated back. She could only hear herself. On Naruto. Her blissful state seemed to last forever as the electrical impulses of her nervous system bounced around her body. Her body shook and shivered in pleasure, with her legs tensed, keeping Naruto's hips flush against her. The demonic duo were now both exhausted and no longer virgins. Naruto knelt with her still firmly attached to his pelvis. Sitting against the wall, Kiyomi shivered at the cool night's breeze. Naruto saw her react to the cool air. His leathery black wings erupted from his back and encircled the pair. "You are now mine forever, Kiyomi, mind, soul, and body." Kiyomi just smiled and you mind. Their eyes closing, Naruto placed a final kiss upon his dozing lover's forehead. Outside the cave, Mei had the short skirt under her dress bunched around her waist as she was flipping through the yellow pages so fast. At the climax of the sex scene in the safe, she reached her own bliss and released all over her hands. Some sleep. Naruto's gaze took in Kiyomi's, committing the picture to memory. Feeling emboldened by his uplifting sleep, Naruto flipped himself into a kneeling position. Watching the calm breaths leaving her soft lips, it was hypnotizing to watch the rhythmic intake and exhale of air. Kiyomi's scent carried on her breath and filled Naruto's nose with the smell of cherries. Without thought, he leaned in close to get more of the heavenly smell. Before he knew it, he was within inches of her lips. He pushed himself further. He had to taste the source of this erotic aroma. Naruto claimed Kiyomi's lips in a soft kiss. The electric feeling rushed through his nervous system. Endorphins flooded his brain. Getting control of himself, Naruto went to pull away, but his head was held still by the angelic hands of Kiyomi. Naruto watched her matching blood iris catch his gaze and time stood still. Naruto placed his hands behind her head to get more of her lips. Kiyomi was lost in the pleasure she got from this extended kiss. Wanting to get more, she tentatively parted her lips and brushed her tongue along the muscled blonde's lips. Responding to her unasked question, Naruto opened his mouth and let their tongues duel for dominance. The pair's tongues danced gracefully against each other, wanting to commit their partner to memory. Soon enough, Kiyomi allowed Naruto to take the lead and he pushed his tongue into her waiting mouth. Back and forth their tongues explored each other, unaware of their audience of one. Mei was in a very awkward situation, watching the people she barely knew for 2 days intensely make out before her. Feeling hot under the dress, she quickly picked herself up and made for the exit. Maybe the cool night's breeze could quell the burning desire inside. As their tongue war ended, both parties were hot and bothered. Moving away from the wall and laying on the cool rock, they continued their heated make-out session. Naruto's hand was anything but idle, roaming across the silk cloth of her dress. Kiyomi's hand traced and felt each of the blonde's muscles along his back and moving around his ribs to his muscular chest and abs. With Naruto on top, his hand moved south and felt along the creamy thigh of the woman beneath him. Seeking to use both hands in his endeavor, he pulled Kiyomi and himself into a sitting position with her long legs wrapped around his waist. With the change of position, Kiyomi could clearly feel the wide outline of Naruto's penis through her thin and now soaking wet panties. She sported a deep blush across her cheeks at the feel of his manhood. The blonde demon could feel the heated core of the woman through his pants. He moved his kisses along her jaw and down her neck, remembering each sound she made. He stopped at the collar of her kimono and undid the elegant bow around her waist. Watching the blue cloth fall from her shoulders, Naruto gently tossed it away. Venturing more kisses down her collarbone and deep into the valley of cleavage. Placing a hand over her right breast, he gave it a couple gentle squeezes. Kiyomi let out a soft shaking moan. Slipping the bra cup up over her boobs, the cool night air perking her nipples up, he took a nipple in one hand and leaned down to take the other in his mouth. Flicking his wet tongue across her hardened nipple, Kiyomi let a couple more moans out. As Naruto worked her breasts, she ground her hips to feel the friction from his penis against his nether lips. Holding his head to her chest, Kiyomi was in heaven. The stimulation of her nipples and friction against her pussy, it was too much for the virgin demoness. Naruto, I'm coming. The orgasm flooded her body with warmth as she soaked Naruto's pants. Kiomi leaned heavily on Naruto as she caught her breath. Once steadied, she reached into his pants and wrapped her delicate fingers around his penis, giving it a couple test strokes. She got off his lap. Naruto quickly divested himself of pants. Kiomi knelt and took hold of his hardened penis. She peeked her tongue out and gave the purple head a lick. Finding the taste of his cock to be neutral, she gave it a longer lick, dragging her tongue around the head. Naruto was heaven. He felt the slippery wet tongue swirl around his cock, around and around like a whirlpool. She came closer and closer. Finally she took his penis into her mouth. Naruto clenched his hands, leaving deep gouges in the solid rock. Her wet cavern accompanied his penis perfectly. Kiyomi's light sucking, with her tongue still lathering his penis with love, was quickly bringing him to an apex. Kiomi felt his penis was properly lubricated with her saliva and began to descend down his length, filling her mouth until it tapped the back of her throat. Looking at how much remaining, she guessed about 3 of the 7 inches still remained outside of her mouth. Determined to get the entire size of the piece of sexual meat she was sucking into her tight mouth, Kiomi slid her mouth back to the tip and started her descent again, faster and harder. Naruto watched with glazed eyes as this perfect woman forced his penis into her mouth. He could see the strain on her face as she still had 2 inches left to go. The tight muscles at the back of her throat caressed and tightened around the head of his penis each time it passed through. Feeling his climax approaching, Naruto placed a hand on her head and ran his fingers through the long red hair. Naruto could feel the semen in his testicles bubbling, eager to escape. Kiyomi's throat protested the intrusion and put even more work into expelling the offending penis from her mouth. The tensing muscles of her mouth gave Naruto the final push he needed to ejaculate. Kiyomi, here it comes. His large hand stopping her from moving back. The large loads he pumped out quickly rushed over her tongue and down her esophagus and finding its home deep within her belly. Sputtering a couple times at the flow of semen, she swallowed all she could. A couple drops still escaped her red lips and dribbled down her chin. Naruto barely felt anything at all. Right now he only felt the need to sate his primal urges. Naruto's eyes sharpened and he flipped Kiyomi onto her back. Rubbing her silky smooth thighs, he came to where they met and only the wet blue panties separate him from his goal. Quickly slipping her last piece of clothing off, Naruto took a deep whiff of her sex and was intoxicated. Running his rough tongue across the weeping petals of her pussy, he placed his penis against her womanhood. Before Naruto could plunge into the wet silky depths, a creamy soft hand touched his whiskered cheeks. Finally the attempt stopped. 30 years I slept undisturbed until the Yondaime himself entered my domain. He opened one of his scrolls and outspewed thousands of his high-ancient kunai. Using his Fuin jutsu, he teleported around me, slicing at my quickly reforming body. Successfully earning my anger, he retreated to the entrance of my home. The Namakes taunted me a daring game against my power. I chased him out of my chambers. He must have stashed his kunai along the way, for every time I would near attack, the Yondaime would flash a few hundred away. Finally we reached Konoha and he stood in his sealing circle with Naruto wrapped at his feet. I watched the Hokage flash through many seals before he slammed his hands onto Naruto. Nothing happened, so I launched a Baijiu ball of Yukai into the village, leaving large craters and many sectors of Konoha in ruin. I charged another up by I was stopped, black chains raining from the sky immobilizing. I watched as the gods of old descended from the sky. Their eyes fell upon me and ethereal hands reached into my body and pulled my spirit out. The same occurred with Naruto. The black chain slithered around the spiritual form of Naruto. Taking a deep breath from her long story, Kiyomi's eyes were beginning to tear up, from which she knew the next part of the tale was. Once those chains had stopped, my soul and body were dragged into the small form of Naruto. From then on I only remember blackness, except when he had entered life or death situations, which were far too many for a child of his age. I caught fragments of his pain and emotions when sealed within him, until his death when he was 15. May knew beforehand Naruto had died, but at 15 he should have barely been a Jonin. What happened? How did he die? Choking back a sob, she could see the execution through Naruto's eyes. He was executed by the Yondaime, his own father. Kiomi went on to describe the method of execution the Namikaze employed on his own son. The contract struck with the gods by the Yondaime was that when Naruto died of natural causes I would die with him. Fortunately Namikaze broke the deal halfway through, so Naruto followed me to where demons go when they have died to be rebirthed or destroyed. Wiping the tears from her bloodshot crimson eyes, Kiomi continued, Naruto hasn't been the same since. His only goal is to destroy all of Konoha and execute his father the same way he had done to him. My own demonic rage now flows in Naruto, empowering his darker thoughts and primal instincts. By the time Kiyomi's long tale had ended it was midday and both women were starving, but looking at the meat that Naruto brought they suddenly could go without another meal. They moved their discussion from the cave to the rock shelf at the exit of the Yukai-made cave. Kiomi learned a lot about Mei, like how the bloodline user loved crispy shrimp rolls, and she no longer wanted to become the leader of Kiri. Mei on her side of the conversation learned more of the demoness, like her favorite thing the euphoric feeling she got from drinking the blood of other demons, and she wished to bring Naruto back to the caring boy he once was. The sun began to set behind the mountains and the thundering of massive power being unleashed slowed to a stop. Watching the sky intently they searched for Naruto, and find the blonde demon they did as his body shot through the dissipating clouds and smashed right into the side of the dormant volcano. The deep hole punched into the mountain could easily fit a dozen people. Kiomi and Mei peered into the gouged earth and saw the burned and blackened body of Naruto. The demon's wounds were healing, but they could tell he had put himself through hell. Lifting Naruto, the woman brought him up to the cave. Gently placing him on the cold rock floor, Kiomi began to flow her yukai through her partner. The deep purple yukai flitted off their bodies as the soothing effect the combined energies made. Assuring that he felt no long-lasting effects of his injuries, Kiomi placed his head into her lap and ran her soft fingers through his hair. Mei watched Kiyomi's action that a mother or possibly lover would only do. Feeling the pain of loneliness, Mei continued to watch. In Naruto's unconscious state, his mind running through his memories, screaming at the nightmare of faces and events swirled around him like an uncontrollable whirlpool, and he was being dragged to the bottom of it. When his screaming stopped, his eyes glazed over, content to give up and just die to escape his agony. Then he felt something. It started with just the soft caress that flitted across his unblemished skin. Then the feeling spread and deepened, it flowed through him and soothed all his fears and pain. The whirlpool of memories stopped and he just floated in the darkness, enjoying the weightlessness this unknown feeling gave him. Finally, after a plethora of restless nights filled with nightmares, he simply cried tears of joy at finally being free from them, even for only one night. Naruto's joy affected his reality as well. His chakra lightened, became soft once again. The oppressing thought Kiomi always felt from him quieted till she could feel none, and largest of all, a few innocent tears flowed down from his eyes for the first time in many years. Kiomi couldn't help but smile at this. Naruto returned to normal, if for only a little while. Leaning down, she placed a chaste kiss upon his forehead. This was the Naruto she remembered. Kiomi could tell that this would be a long question and answer session. Luckily, she could still feel Naruto far above the clouds, unleashing amounts of yukai she didn't know he had. It would be a long while before he came down to recover. It is what I said, I am no longer the Kyuubi. But that doesn't make sense. Your hair, so why aren't you the Kyuubi? Threading her fingers through her long red hair. The answer to your question will be found when my explanation is done. Successfully shutting Mei up, Kiomi continued. Naruto's village Konoha sought to use my great power through a Jinchuriki. Hundreds of years I had been here and the arrogance displayed was sickening. Their Shodaime was the first to try his hand at my sealing. His Makotan had calmed each of the other 9 Baiju and thought I would be just as easily tamed and sealed. They were wrong. The Senju used his own son to be the conduit for my power. His seals unraveled before his eyes and his child suffered his punishment as the boy was disintegrated when my yukai escaped. Flashback: standing at the mouth of what looked to be the entrance, so large that the tallest buildings of Konoha would fit twice on top of each other and still have room, the Shodaime Hashirama Senju stood holding a small baby with a platoon of his personal Anbu, platoon as 30 men. Handing out each of the other Baiju to placate the nations, Hashirama saved the Kyuubi for Konoha. To keep the village stronger than everyone, they would need the strongest of Baiju. fall in line meant today Konoha takes another step above everyone else and my son shall be the conduit for our rise. For Konoha, Hashirama raised their morale, gave them courage to face a nightmare. Rushing into the bowls of the earth they ran an arrowhead formation with Hashirama leading them down the darkened spiral tunnel. They ran for 5 minutes before the tunnel opened up into a cave so large Konoha itself could hide and never be seen. Hashirama could feel they were miles below the surface of the planet. Kyuubi opened her eyes and saw the arrival of those ants. She could feel the minuscule amounts of demon yokai flowing through them. Watching them spread out around her they began molding their chakra and she felt her power being drawn to the small child covered and encircled in seals. Thrashing her tails and head she flattened many of the Anbu hoping to contain her. She tried to pull away from the child while using a tail to squish the impudent human who wanted her power, but she was stopped by a large tree root forming a cage over the child. Smacking the roots away she almost pierced the child, but green chakra enshrouded the child and wrapped around her tail and pulled her towards the seals. More trees sprouted and began binding each tail and limb, holding them firm while she was siphoned into the boy. Finally the last of Kyuubi was gone, locked away into the senju to use as he saw fit. Hashirama inspected the seals flowing across his son's body. Each flowing brush stroke of the ceiling was perfect. Scooping up his child, Hashirama held him close to his body. Today men, we mourn the loss of those here, but we celebrate that their sacrifice was not in vain. Konoha will never fall. Holding the boy up for all the Anbu left. The senju was almost orgasmic at the prospect of teaching his son how to harness the Kyuubi and usher Konoha into the golden age of domination over the elemental countries. Before the leaf ninja could even leave the cave, baby senju let out a ear-piercing wail and its skin became unbearably hot. Hashirama gently set his child on the cool ground to inspect what went wrong. When the blanket was removed he witnessed each line of the Jinchuriki seals were separating and evaporating off the child's skin at an alarming rate. Before he could even try and stop the event, red yokai pulsed outwards and everyone were launched away from the epicenter. Hashirama looked from his fallen position as his son flailed its tiny arms around seeking relief from the unbearable pain it was feeling. The skin of the child bubbled and broiled before misting off. The muscles below went through the painful process. Kyuubi's chakra kept the child alive through the entire ordeal. As it was liquefied only when the bones began to show did the unearthly cries stop. The Shodaime had a front row seat to the slow and painful death of his firstborn child. The red yokai solidified into the blood-red fox form of Kyuubi. Ha ha ha, did you get a good look, mortals? This is the fate of all who dare face me. Leave, spread what you have seen. Remember the blood of that child covers your hands. The Konoha ninja made haste and ran for the exit with Hashirama spearheading the group. Salty tears flowed from Hashirama's eyes. The sight of his dying child forever burned into his mind. He thought of only revenge. I vow Kyuubi, you will one day be the weapon of Konoha or die. End flashback. Clearing her throat, that was but the first of many attempts to harness my powers, and each failed just as the first. Shodaime's second child faced the same fate. Nidaime's 3 children each were ripped apart from my yokai. Sandaime used 3 of his 5 children and those 3 perished as well. Mei opened her bleary eyes to the shaded ceiling of the cave. Wiping the sleep from her face she glanced over to Kiomi who knelt on her bed perfectly still. Opening her mouth to say something, Mei found Kiomi answered the question before she could ask. I am meditating to concentrate on reading the thoughts of Naruto. Mei's face was the picture of confusion. Why does she need to? She was brought from her thoughts by Kiomi answering her unasked question. Read the thoughts of Naruto. Since we arrived in the land of water and closer to Naruto's desire of revenge, his chakra when mixed with mine has began to feel dark and angry. It is coarse against my chakra and harder to work with. Mei wondered how Yagura was his object of revenge. What does Naruto have against Yagura, and how are you reading my thoughts? Letting out a soft angelic laugh, Kiomi humored the mortal. Oh, Yagura is but a stepping stone to Naruto in his quest for vengeance. As for my ability, I acquired it along our travels and it does suit our needs. What is his ultimate goal if the Sanbi plays a role? Obviously killing someone, correct? Mei questioned. And if you learned how to read minds, then you must be able to impart the knowledge onto others? Kiomi merely wagged an index finger as if to scold a young child. Such secrets aren't mine to tell. As for my mind reading, it would be hard to explain to anyone who hasn't experienced what Naruto and I share. Oh yeah, and what exactly do you share? Mei huffed out at being blocked off from finding out her savior's objective. To put it simply, we are two beings bound as one for an eternity together, huh? Was Mei's intelligent reply to the answer that had a far deeper meaning and history than she knew. Were you always bound together? No, we were once apart. I was a mighty and powerful demon, he was just. Kiomi never finished because a large bear thudded against the ground between them. Turning their heads, they saw the imposing winged form of Naruto silhouetted against the rising sun. Receding his wings, Naruto used his naturally sharpened nails to begin skinning and peeling back the fur from the bear. I was human, the blonde said coldly. Blurting out her question, then how did you become stuck together and Naruto yourself change into demon? If you could watch Naruto's emotions on a line graph, you would see that its usual flat line changed drastically at the uttering of her words. It would be spiking and just keep going up along with the rage he felt. The female duo could practically hear Naruto's teeth grinding and cracking under the severe pressure they were under, and just as quickly Yukai would cover the crack, knit the tooth back to normal, and the process would repeat. The scraps of skin held in Naruto's hands bubbled and liquefied, pooling on the ground. Yesterday Kiomi was nearly incapacitated by just Naruto thinking about Konoha, but when someone indirectly brought up his every feeling of betrayal and pain from his human life, now Kiyomi's body sought to stop this, and it automatically began trying to force the disturbance away with nudges and mental prods to leave. Naruto's mind registered the suggestions Kiomi sent as being his own, and he stood from his spot and walked for the exit, leaping high into the morning sky with his blackened bone wings erupting from his back mid-leap, and he zoomed into the clouds and was out of sight within seconds. The sky rumbled and thundered as the sun was blocked out by the darkening rain clouds. Kiomi relaxed as the mental barrage stopped and she could hear her own thoughts and properly breathe. Looking over to the human female, Mei was flat on her back, hyperventilating, being so close to an explosion of hate-filled Yukai. The half-skin bear was mostly liquefied, like someone has poured acid over the flesh. What was that? Mei shouted once she steadied her heart rate. Naruto is mentally scarred from his life as a human, and his anger was only amplified upon the sealing process being incomplete, Kiomi said sadly as she nursed a headache. What sealing process? Kiomi sighed and supposed if Mei was to tag along on this adventure, then she should know who it is she is dealing with. I was once the Kyuubi no Yoko, second most powerful demon to cross the dimensional lines and ravage this world. She began. Naruto was once my Jinchuriki. The seal used by the Yondaime Hokage was unlike any other before. This one was powered by the gods themselves to one day merge our spirits together, and when Naruto died I would follow him into death and beyond. What do you mean once were the Kyuubi?